Okay, welcome to the Leadership Podcast. This is the show where we take some of the best books, podcasts, and blog posts to do with business, leadership, personal development, that kind of thing. And we try and pull out the lessons that can really help you and me become the best remote leaders that we can be. Okay, so it's the first week of 2025. And if you're anything like me, you've been spending the last week or two planning out your year, figuring out how all of the things that you didn't do in 2024 are going to happen this year. You're going to hit all those goals. And of course, like, planning is a funny, beautiful thing because you have to do it. You have to have some idea of where you're going. But planning by itself can be kind of dangerous because you get all of the dopamine rush of feeling like you're being productive and you're doing something and picturing where you'll be when you hit your goals. But of course, you don't have to do any of the hard work of the actual doing. And that's really where the work begins. That's where so many plans fall apart, right? Is you have the right vision, but you set long off goals and you don't bring it back to kind of like the tactical, what do I need to do to get there? And so that's why I wanted to kick off this year by talking about a book that I've been loving recently. And it is the 12-Week Year by Brian P. Moran and Michael Lennington. And the subtitle on this book is Get More Done in 12 Weeks Than Others Do in 12 Months. I think it's a really good framework to use for planning well, I shouldn't say planning your year because that's kind of the whole point of the book, but a real good framework to use for making progress on the things that are important to you. And there's 5 things in particular that I think are really, really applicable to remote leaders. And so let's get into it now and pull those out. Okay, so lesson number 1 from the book is this concept of, the clues in the name, adopting a 12-week execution cycle, right? And the book makes the point that typically what we do in our businesses and our lives is we set annual goals, right? What do I want to achieve in 2025? I want to double my revenue. I want to lose 20 pounds, whatever it is. And a year is a long time. And a couple of things on setting annual goals. One is it's really tough to predict what you can or can't do over the course of a year. And the other thing with an annual goal is it doesn't create a sense of urgency, right? So maybe you set a goal to double the revenue in your business, and January, February, you're kind of a little off track. And you always think, well, I have the rest of the year to make it up, right? And you really see this. I'm sure we've all worked in companies where when it comes to financial year end, those last 4 weeks in a company are chaotic and focused and end up doing a huge chunk of the revenue or whatever it is the company's driving for, because people are so focused and they have that time pressure. So adopting a 12-week cycle kind of gives you that time pressure multiple times through the year. I think this is particularly useful in remote teams. You know, that whole piece of annual goals kind of like disintegrating throughout the year, I think that can be even more acute in a remote team where you aren't seeing people every day. And so I really like these short execution cycles where you can focus on a few things that get you towards the bigger vision and just make sure that you absolutely nail them. And the subject of having a vision brings me on to the second big takeaway from the book, which is you need to have a long-term vision and you need to be able to articulate that to your team. And while the book doesn't want you to think about annual goals, it absolutely makes the point that you need to know where you're going over the next 3 years, 5 years, like where you're trying to get to. And that's incredibly important in any team, but in a remote team particularly, because behavior change is difficult. And we all, if left to our own devices, will kind of like revert back to what we're comfortable doing. Sometimes it's easiest to visualize with a personal example. Like if you have a goal to lose 10 pounds or something, like getting out of bed to go to the gym at 6 a.m. is hard. And without a bigger vision to tie it to of what your life will be like when you're lighter or stronger or whatever your health goals are, it's very easy to not do it. And that's true in a business as well. You know, if you are planning goals to move the business forward, your job as a leader is to get people to not just do their normal day job, but to find time for this stuff which will move the business forward. And to do that, people have to have a really good idea of where they're going. And it has to be something that they identify with and they believe in. And a vision's super important for that as well. It's, you hear people talk a lot about culture in business and how culture in remote businesses can be difficult because you lose a lot of the interactions. But I really think for me, vision trumps culture, or at least vision comes before culture. And if you are super clear about what you're trying to do as a business, what your values are, then people can kind of self-identify. Yes, that matches up with what I want out of this period of my life, or no, it doesn't. And then you have the right people, which makes the whole culture piece a lot easier. So lesson number 2 from the book is you need that vision before you set the tactical stuff. And one more thing I'd say on vision as well, particularly in a remote company, is you have to beat people around the head with it. It's not enough to present it once on a company call. It's not enough to stick it on the internet somewhere and hope that people will see it. Obviously, you need to be living and breathing it in the things you do as well, but you just need to be repeating it and repeating it at every opportunity within your team. Okay, lesson number 3 from the book, The 12-Week Year, is focusing on tactical actions. So, okay, you've done step 1, you've set the vision, you've broken that down into a 12-week goal. But the danger is still the same as with annual goals, right? You set these goals, they sound awesome, and then we all get super busy and reactive in our day jobs, and you think, well, I've still got 10 more weeks to do it. And of course, the deadline creeps up, and the stuff doesn't get done. So it's really important to take those 12-week goals and turn them into tactical actions. And, one concept which my management team hear from me to the point that I'm sure they roll their eyes to the point of parody is the difference between lead measurements and lag measurements, right? So, a lag measurement is something that typically you don't know if it's been done until kind of after the case. And a lead measurement is something that kind of tells you ahead of time whether you're on the right track. And the idea is that you try and set lead measurements that if they are done, you think will lead to the lag measurement being done. A really important thing about lead measurements as well is that they are much, much more controllable than lag measurements. So for example, you might set a goal to close 5 deals this quarter. That's better than having no goal at all, but it's not completely under your control, right? It's dependent on customers, dependent on a bunch of different things. But you might think that calling 20 new customers a day will lead you to close those 5 deals in this 12-week period. And that calling 20 new customers a day is a much, much better goal. That's a real lead measurement. It's 100% influenceable by yourself or the person that's being set that goal. And you can track it on a daily and weekly basis as well. And actually, that process of tracking is lesson number 4 from the 12-week year. Once you have the vision, you've set your 12-week goals, you've broken that down into tactical actions, the next step is you need to keep score. You need some sort of system, week to week, day to day, to measure, are you doing the things that you said you were going to do in those tactical actions? So to go back to our example, let's say that we want to close 5 deals this quarter, and we broke that down into the tactical action of we're going to call 20 new customers and try and get them to buy our product. Then you need a system to keep score as you go through the week of, did you make those calls? And the importance of doing that is if you are on track or off track, it makes it really easy to figure out why. It makes it easy to troubleshoot, right? So let's go back to our example. Let's say that we want to close 5 deals this quarter. And we think to do that, we have to call 20 new customers. We get halfway through the 12-week period and we've only sold 1 deal. Well, then we can look through the data, look through our scorecard. And first of all, we'll see, did we do our 20 calls a day over that period? If the answer is no, well, then we know we have an execution problem. Maybe our hypothesis was correct, that those calls would have led to the right amount of deals, but we haven't been doing the calls, so we can't expect the results. And if the answer is yes, we have been doing those calls, then maybe our hypothesis was wrong and we can change direction, we can try something different. So keeping score accurately, consistently, breaking it down weekly and maybe even daily, depending on the use case, is really, really important to implementing this stuff. And the 5th and final lesson from the 12-week year is that success in all of this stuff hinges on your ability to create a culture of accountability and ownership on these tasks throughout the company. If you run a team or a company, the only way you're going to make progress on this stuff is to have people bought in and actually owning things themselves. And yeah, it's really important that you kind of make that happen. A couple of tactical ways that you could do that. One is, going back to the scoreboard point, is to have people kind of input their own numbers. So again, if I'm the guy that's supposed to make 20 calls, probably that can all be automated by some report. But even where it can be automated, I kind of like the process of people having to go and tally up the calls or pull the number from one piece of software and put it into a field in a spreadsheet so that they get a bit more ownership of that number. One of the things that I think can work really well in a remote company is just some kind of prompt that has people input what they're trying to achieve that day. Doesn't have to be super intense or micromanagey. Could be a Slack bot or something, just pops up in the morning time for them and says, what are you aiming to get done today? And the person fills in, hey, I'm going to do my 20 calls. I've got this other stuff going on. And then the next day, a similar prompt that says, did you get done yesterday what you were hoping to? What are you hoping to get done today? And I think, some people might find this a little intrusive, but actually I think the best people will appreciate this, because I can even speak for myself day to day. You have the best intentions in the world with your 12-week goals or whatever. And then the whirlwind of the job takes over and you get to the end of the day or the end of the week and you're like, damn, I've worked a lot of hours this week. I haven't really moved the ball forward on any of that stuff that I wanted to. So actually, I think this daily refocusing can be really, really helpful and get you to where you want to be. Okay, so that is 5 lessons from the book, The 12-Week Year. I really like this book, hugely recommend it, would recommend that you pick up a copy of it. I think particularly if you are someone who has a lot of great strategic ideas for your team or for your business, and you have a clear idea of like where you want to go, but sometimes struggle to make that happen on a regular basis. You get to the end of the quarter or the year and kind of a bunch of goals went by the wayside. I think you'll really dig this. Also very, very true if you kind of feel that way in your personal life sometimes. And one final tip is this is available. If you Google 12-week year PDF, you can pick up a PDF copy of it. And one thing I like to do where I can find PDFs these days is kind of feed it into ChatGPT or into Notebook LM, one of these LLMs. And then you can ask it a bunch of questions, which is a really cool way to kind of interact with the reading material. I will say though, like, please pay for a copy before you do that. Buy the physical book, the Kindle, the audio book. I think that's kind of like, the ethical thing to do, give the authors a little bit of money for the work they've put into this. But also, you really need to know the subject material to be able to interrogate the LLM in a productive way. Okay, that's all I have for you today. If you made it this far through the video with this unbelievably rookie production quality, then I'm super impressed and thankful. If you could go as far as to give me a like and subscribe to the channel, there'll be more content like this coming. This is my journey to try and make you and also me kind of like the best remote leaders that we can be. This is effectively me trying to fix my own problems and recording a self-help therapy session in the hope that it might be useful for somebody else. So I really appreciate your time and good luck out there.